Ujunwa had only been married to Chijioke for a year, yet every day already felt heavy. Living in his family compound in Owerri, she quickly learned who really controlled the house, Mama Gladys. Calm on the outside but cold in action, Mama Gladys didn't raise her voice or criticize Adamas directly. She simply ignored her efforts. From the very first week, every time Adamas cooked, Mama wouldn't touch it. Instead, she would enter the kitchen without a word, prepare her own food, or call someone to deliver her favorite dish. Not once did she try a spoonful of what Adamas made. No scenes, no loud arguments, just a quiet refusal, repeated daily. To outsiders it looked like nothing, a harmless habit of a picky woman. But to Adamas it felt like slow poison. She had studied catering before marriage. She loved cooking. She put her heart into every pot of egusi, oha, or nsala. But Mama's untouched plates said more than words ever could. Chijioke tried to comfort her. Don't take it personal, Ada. Mama's just used to her style. But it wasn't about preference, it was about rejection. The rejection of her presence, her role, her worth. And Adamas felt it in her bones. Even when she cooked at community events and got praised, Mama would sit expressionless, uninterested. The worst part was the silence. If Mama had insulted her food, it might have been easier. But this was worse, like she didn't exist. Adamas began doubting herself. Was she truly a bad cook? Was she failing as a wife? She never spoke back, never cried where anyone could see. But every time she cleared away a full plate Mama hadn't touched, something inside her dimmed. It wasn't just about the food, it was about being accepted in a home where she felt invisible. Every meal was a test, and every day she failed. Chijioke always tried to calm her, brushing it off with, "Don't take it personally. Mama's just picky." But to Adamas it wasn't about preferences. It was about respect. Cooking wasn't just a chore to her. It was her passion, her pride. She had studied catering before marriage, perfected her flavors, and knew her way around a kitchen better than most. Her egusi soup was rich, her oha was seasoned just right, and her nsala could warm the coldest day. But none of it mattered in that house. Mama Gladys never touched a single dish she made. Day after day, Adamas would wake early, cook with care, and serve with hope. And each time, Mama would simply push the plate aside or leave it untouched. Then she would quietly get up, make her own food, or order something from a street vendor. No insults, no arguments, just silence, sharp and heavy. That silence stung more than words. It told Adamas she wasn't welcome, that no matter what she did, it would never be enough. She never complained, never asked why. She kept her pain bottled inside. But each time she saw that full plate carried to the sink untouched, she felt a crack inside her. Slowly, doubt crept in. Maybe she wasn't good enough. Maybe she had no value. She started to question her place in the home, in the marriage, even in herself. Was she failing? Was she invisible? Even when neighbors at church events praised her cooking, saying things like, "Who made this soup? It's sweet, oh." Mama remained stone-faced. No nod, no reaction. It felt like she was performing every day for someone who refused to even look at the stage. And all Adamas ever wanted, just once, was to hear one simple thing: "Well done." Not for ego, not for show, but just to feel seen. Just to know she mattered. But instead, she was served silence. And that silence screamed louder than any insult ever could. One quiet afternoon, while clearing dishes, Adamas walked past the hallway and heard Mama Gladys speaking on the phone. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the words floated clearly from the sitting room. "This girl cannot cook," Mama said, laughing softly.
No taste, no soul.
"She's just managing in my son's house. At least I don't poison myself." Adamas stopped in her tracks. The words hit her like cold water. She stood there frozen, her heart pounding, her breath caught halfway. She had never heard Mama speak about her so directly. Silent rejection was one thing, but this was a knife through her chest. She didn't react. She didn't slam the door or confront her. She walked quietly into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the wall for a few minutes. Her hands shook slightly, but no tears came. She had cried too many silent tears already. This time, she reached for her journal from under the pillow. It was old, worn, and filled with hopes and quiet pain. She opened a fresh page and wrote just one line. "One day, you will eat my food, and you will swallow every word too." It wasn't anger that filled her. It was resolve. For so long, she had kept her head down, trying to earn Mama's approval with silence and service. But now she understood. No matter how hard she tried, Mama had already made up her mind. Adamas closed the journal gently, placed it back under her pillow, and stood up. Something shifted inside her that day. A quiet fire lit up in her chest, not to fight back with insults, but to prove her worth through action. Not just to Mama, but to herself. From that moment, she promised that her food would one day speak so loudly, it would silence every insult that had ever been whispered behind her back. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need revenge. All she needed was the right moment. And when it came, she'd be ready. 2 months passed, and life in the compound stayed the same. Quiet, cold, and full of unspoken tension. Then one morning, excitement buzzed through town. A new poster was everywhere. Cook and Shine, a televised cooking contest sponsored by the state's Ministry of Culture and Tourism. It promised recognition for local home cooks, a cash prize, and a chance to be featured on national TV. Adamas first heard about it from neighbors gossiping outside the gate, but she didn't pay much attention. It sounded like something meant for confident people, not women like her who had spent a year doubting themselves in silence. Later that evening, Chijiok came home with a copy of the flyer in his hand. He held it out with a grin and said, "You should try." Adamas laughed quietly and shook her head. "Me? On TV? I don't think I'm—" But before she could finish, he gently interrupted her. "You're amazing, Ada. The world should taste what I taste every day." His words made her heart pause. She hadn't heard that kind of praise in so long, not even from him. She stared at the flyer. Her hands were unsure, but something inside her stirred. She wasn't ready for cameras or stages. She didn't dream of fame. But she was ready for one thing: to be seen, truly seen, and not just by the world. She wanted one specific person to finally acknowledge her: Mama Gladys. If this competition could open just one door, give her just one chance to be tasted and judged fairly, she would take it. Not for applause, not for pride, just for the bite that had never been taken. Adamas smiled, a soft, hopeful smile she hadn't worn in months. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try." It wasn't just a competition to her. It was a chance to speak in the only language she had ever trusted: her food. She folded the flyer and held it close. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the beginning of something bigger than pain, the start of her quiet rise. Adamas filmed her application video late one night while Chijiok held the camera. She made her favorite native soup and explained each step with care. Her voice trembled a little, but her hands moved with confidence. A week passed, then two. Then one evening, while she was folding laundry, her phone rang. "Congratulations," the voice said. "You've been selected for Cook and Shine." She froze, her heart skipping. Then she screamed. Chijiok rushed in, and when she told him, he lifted her off the ground and spun her around. For the first time in a long while, she laughed like a child. The house buzzed with excitement. Well, most of it. When Chijiok told Mama Gladys over dinner, she didn't flinch. She simply looked up and said, "They're picking anybody these days." Then she stood and walked away.
No congratulations. No blessing.
Just more silence. Adamas felt the sting, but she didn't let it break her. She had expected it. This was not about Mama anymore. This was her moment. When the travel date arrived, Chijiok helped her pack her small box. She ironed her best wrappers, labeled her spices, and kissed the doorway goodbye. She had lived in this compound as a shadow, but now she was stepping into something new. That morning, Chijiok placed her bag in the taxi, kissed her forehead, and said, "Go and show them what I already know." Mama Gladys stood at the kitchen window. She didn't come outside. She didn't say a word. As the car drove away, Adamas looked back one last time.
No wave. No goodbye.
Just the same cold stare. But she didn't cry, because this time she wasn't cooking for Mama's approval. She wasn't cooking to be accepted. She was cooking to be heard, cooking for a stage bigger than her pain. With her head high and her spirit calm, Adamas left that compound not as a quiet wife, but as a woman ready to be seen. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about rising, and she was ready. The competition was nothing like Adamas had imagined. The other contestants were skilled, confident, and loud in the kitchen. Cameras hovered, lights glared, and the judges didn't smile often. But Adamas stayed calm. She didn't try to impress anyone with tricks. She just cooked from her heart. Her dishes were full of flavor, deeply traditional, and carefully prepared. Spiced just right, balanced with local touches, and always served with a story. She told of her roots, her father's favorite meals, and the little compound where she once cooked in silence. Week after week, her food stood out. The judges began to notice her quiet strength. She wasn't loud, but she was focused. She didn't boast, but her results spoke clearly. Viewers across the country started connecting with her. Her story wasn't just about food. It was about endurance. Her soft voice, gentle smile, and disciplined cooking made her memorable. And just like that, she made it into the final 3. Then came the big announcement. The final round would be aired live. Each contestant was to prepare a childhood recipe that told the story of who they were.
No existence.
No second chances. Just one dish, one memory, and one shot. Adamas knew exactly what to make. Her father's favorite, ofe akwu with soft goat meat and ripe plantain. It wasn't the fanciest dish, but it was full of soul. She soaked the palm nuts herself, seasoned the goat meat with care, and let the aroma fill the studio. As she stirred, memories of her father laughing by the fire flooded her mind. She didn't just want to win, she wanted to honor him. She plated with shaking hands but a steady heart. This dish was her voice, her past, and her power. What she didn't know was that the producers had arranged a twist. Each contestant would be surprised with guests from their hometown. Adamas had no idea who they invited. As she turned to face the judges, a familiar figure stepped onto the studio floor, one person she never expected to see. As Adamas carefully turned to begin plating her final dish, her eyes lifted, and her hand froze mid-air. There, walking into the brightly lit studio, was Mama Gladys. For a split second, Adamas thought she was seeing things. But it was real. Mama, dressed in her usual lace wrapper and firm expression, entered without a word and took a seat in the front row. Her face was unreadable, arms folded tightly, eyes scanning the studio. The audience noticed the shift. The crew noticed too. Even the judges looked curious. But for Adamas, everything around her blurred. All she could see was the woman who had spent a whole year silently rejecting her. She hadn't expected this. Not here. Not now. The producers had mentioned surprise guests, but she assumed maybe a cousin, or someone from the neighborhood. Not Mama. Not the one person whose opinion had crushed her the most. Her hands trembled as she reached for the plantain slices. She tried to focus, but her heart thudded in her ears. What if Mama rejected her again? This time in front of judges, cameras, and an entire nation watching live. But she couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. She steadied her breath and garnished the ofe akwu with care, placing the goat meat gently, arranging the ripe plantain just the way her father used to like it. Every move was deliberate, every spice a memory. She whispered silently to herself, "This is not for approval. This is for truth." As she placed the plate on the judging table, she stole one last glance at Mama Gladys. Still stiff, still unreadable. But this time, Adamas didn't lower her gaze. She stood tall, apron tied, eyes steady. She had cooked this meal with everything inside her, not to please but to speak. And even if Mama didn't say a word, the world would taste it. But a small part of her still wondered, would Mama take a bite? Or would she once again walk away? The answer, she knew, would come in just a few moments. The moment had come. The judges leaned forward, each taking a spoonful of Adamas' ofe akwu. The aroma alone made them smile. As they tasted, they nodded, exchanged glances, and began scribbling notes. "Beautiful balance," one said. "Bold flavor," another added. It was clear they were impressed. Adamas felt a small breath of relief, but the real test was still waiting. One final guest. One final spoon. A crew member gently placed the steaming bowl in front of Mama Gladys. The room grew silent. Cameras zoomed in. Everyone watched as she stared at the plate for a long second. Then her eyes slowly moved to Adamas, standing still with trembling hands, and then back to the food. Mama picked up the spoon. She didn't rush. She stirred slowly, then lifted a bite of goat meat and thick red stew to her mouth. She took a bite, swallowed, then took another. Her hand suddenly paused midair. Her expression shifted, softening. Her eyes, usually sharp, filled with water. The silence deepened. Then, in a quiet, shaky voice, she whispered, "My husband used to love this. This tastes like home." The room erupted in applause. Ujunwa didn't move. Her heart had stopped. She had imagined so many scenarios, but never this. Mama stood up, not slowly, not angrily, with purpose. She walked toward the center of the stage. A producer handed her the microphone. She turned to Ujunwa, voice steady but emotional. "I judged you too fast. I let pride poison my tongue. But today, you fed my heart." The crowd stood on their feet. The claps became louder, echoing through the studio. Tears rolled down Adamas' cheeks, but she didn't wipe them. For the first time, she was seen. Not just as a wife, not just as a cook, but as a woman who turned silence into strength. Mama reached out and held her hand. And in that moment, the kitchen battles, the cold glances, the untouched plates, all melted away. Ujunwa didn't win just applause. She won back something she thought she'd lost forever: dignity. When the episode finally aired, it felt like the whole town was watching. From barber shops to market stalls, everyone was talking about Ujunwa. But the real surprise was the way people spoke to Mama Gladys. At the market, women approached her with wide smiles. "Mama, your daughter-in-law is something else, oh," one said. "You're lucky to have her," another added. And for the first time, Mama didn't brush them off. She didn't give a cold reply or defend her pride. She just nodded quietly, humbled. Something in her had changed. That evening, the house felt different. No tension, no silence, just the sound of evening rain tapping on the roof. Mama and Ujunwa sat across from each other at the dining table. No one else was around. It was quiet. Then Mama cleared her throat and looked up. Her voice was low, but sincere. "You are not just my son's wife," she said. "You are a woman of grace. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible." Ujunwa didn't expect those words. She had stopped hoping for them long ago. She didn't need an apology to move forward. She had already begun healing. But hearing it, seeing the softness in Mama's eyes, felt like something inside her had finally been mended. She smiled, gentle and real, and replied, "Maybe we can start fresh. Over dinner." Mama chuckled softly and nodded. "Only if you're the one cooking." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But it was powerful. A moment of peace between two women who had spent too long in silence. A small conversation, yet it carried so much weight. From rejection to respect, from cold glances to shared laughter. Everything had shifted. And that dinner? It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about connection, about family, about finally seeing and being seen. Ujunwa didn't just earn approval. She earned a place. Not through begging or fighting, but by staying true to who she was. And now they could begin again, with a full plate, open hearts, and no silence between them. Months after the competition ended, Ujunwa finally took a bold step. With the little prize money she had saved and support from Chijiok, she opened a small kitchen by the roadside called Taste of Ada. It wasn't big or fancy, just a modest food stall with 3 tables and a wooden sign, but the smell of her food drew people in from every corner of town. Word spread fast. People who had seen her on TV came to try her food. But more than the fame, it was the warmth in every dish that made them return. Her cooking wasn't just delicious, it felt like home. She stayed humble, showing up early every day, grinding pepper by hand, checking each pot herself. She didn't let the cameras change her. And that's what people loved most. They saw the same Ujunwa from the show, soft-spoken, focused, and full of heart. Her menu was simple: ofaku, nsala, okra, jollof rice, and of course, her special Sunday pepper soup. The most surprising sight? Mama Gladys, wearing an apron and helping to serve customers every Sunday afternoon. She didn't just sit and watch. She carried plates, wiped tables, and even asked customers, "How is the taste?" Her proud smile said everything. Those who knew their story couldn't believe it. The same woman who once wouldn't touch Adamas' food was now helping her serve it with joy. To strangers, it was just a nice story, a young woman who went on TV and opened a business. But to Ujunwa it meant everything. It was proof that silent battles can end in victory, that even the hardest heart can soften, that rejection doesn't define you, your response does. And sometimes, the same mouth that once rejected you in private becomes the loudest to praise you in public once the world finally sees your truth. Not through arguments or shouting, but through one powerful thing, a spoonful of honest, heartfelt food. Adamas didn't just win a competition. She changed a heart and built a life with her own hands, one plate at a time.